What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and you all know who I have. If you can't see this lovely face, it's Rylend Grant, comic creator, screenwriter. Man, welcome back to the show for your 1000th episode.
Glad to be back. Yeah, don't I get a t-shirt or something like that? 1000
Y-
episodes, something
Yeah,
like
like
that.
it,
Yeah, I
it,
was maybe a plaque. I don't have enough stuff on my wall, so send me a
right. You
plaque.
need a
I'll
you
put
need
it
a
up.
plaque.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm always glad to have you back on. If y'all don't know who Rylend Grant is, Rylend's one of the first, not one of, he is the first person that ever let me talk to him on the microphone as a comic book creator, uh and he just hasn't been able to get rid of me since. So I'm always love talking with you and seeing what's going on. But you you got a new Kickstarter coming out. I mean, I felt like we said we were done with Kickstarters last time. We're like, no, we're done. And you're like, you know what? Let's do it again.
Well, it is such a weird time. I mean, we can talk about the business of all of it, but a weird time in the film business, which sends me back to comics, and a weird time in the comic business, which traditional publishing. I'm not certain what a lot of these companies, if not most of these companies, have to offer creators. So I'm a fan of this direct to consumer thing. A fan of most of it. I'm not a big fan of packaging up comic books and sending them to people, and I like as much as I like talking with people like you, a lot of the promotional stuff, meaning like the day to day, like, oh, I got to tweet, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to make sure I send this email out. All of that stuff is a grind, and that is tough. But I mean, if you have a book released in a comic shop, there's a whole lot of promotional crap that comes with that also. On Kickstarter, it's yours, you control it. You can act, it's very hard to make money as a creator putting comics in comic shops. You can make $1.50 on Kickstarter, and I think, all in all, for the consumer, it's a better experience. It's a better product. It's more personalized. If there's something you want, you can usually get it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know, love hate, because it is so difficult. But any of this stuff is
What?
difficult. So, and anything worth doing is difficult. So go ahead.
Right. Well,
Yep.
what are the things I love though, Ryland? We're talking your Kickstarter. You're like, I love to do. I don't love to do promotion and stuff for it. I think like you're already like almost like 80% funded, and like it came out like a week ago. And you're like, you know what? I probably should talk about this.
Well, so it is a weird time on Kickstarter. I mean, there's a weird time everywhere, and
Right.
we're going to be talking a lot today probably about how it's a weird time. But yeah, so actually it's we're this is slow for me. I usually set about a 7,000 goal, and that is where I'm comfortable in terms of
Mhm.
recouping what I put into it and all that stuff. And then the rest is, the rest actually puts food on the table and all that stuff. It has never taken longer than 5 days to fund. And I've only had one ever take longer than 48 hours. So we are on day, I don't know if this is day 8.
Okay.
Um, and part of that is that it is a new title.
Right.
Uh, People know the jump, they know the Peacekeepers really well. And so it's like, oh, it's that one. I got to go get this one. This is a completely new title. So some people are like, what the hell is The Breach? The new book is called The Breach. It is a Black Mirror-esque sci-fi. It's available on Kickstarter now. Go over and check it out. We'll talk a little bit more about what all that means. So new title is difficult, but it's a weird time on Kickstarter where, people, I mean, we're all having trouble, and disposable income is low, and there are a lot of people that have come to the same conclusion that I have, that traditional publishers don't have a lot to offer creators. So there are a lot of projects on Kickstarter right now, and so it is hard to stand out. And
Mhm.
so what I am finding is that there are a lot of people that are kind of downsizing. So, I mean, backers are more kind of scattered as it is, but when people do back, we're getting a lot more digital backers. People that used to back, buy a hard copy are buying digital, and that's because there's so much out there.
Right.
People come onto Kickstarter usually with like a monthly budget, and it's like I have this much to spend, and so they can buy a hard copy of one book, or they can buy a digital copy of 3 or 4 books, and there's a lot of great stuff there. So they want to spread the wealth and they want a lot of material to read and people are giving away extras and so let's get in on the party and so that's going on. But even I was talking with Stephen Prince, the Monster Matador creator. Monster Matador is also on Kickstarter and you should go check that out. Friend of the show.
Yep.
But I was talking with Stephen Prince yeah, about quote unquote rich person problems and so we have some great tiers. We have these tiers, and you've actually taken advantage of these tiers in more than one way, where you can actually have yourself drawn into the book or drawn onto the cover of the book and whatever. There it is back there. It's
Right behind
beautiful.
John Locke.
You have made the you have made the most of those tiers. I think
Right.
you have set the standard. Big fan of that. And so we have a backer who has since the beginning of my Kickstarter life, he has come on and he always does the draw me in and give me lines tier, and which is an expensive tier. Uh, uh, this go round, uh, backed immediately like he always does, and thank God. But backed at the draw me in tier, which is a little less expensive.
Right.
And so very thankful for him. Very thankful for anyone that comes in and does the premium tier, and we're going to give them the best experience possible. However, I think that is like again it's a rich person problem, but I'm saying like I'm complaining about my premium backers downsizing, but I think it is indicative of what's happening on the platform
Right.
in general is that people are kind of everybody kind of has to take a step back because things are tough
Yeah.
and blah blah
Well,
blah. So I think that long-winded way of saying I think that that's why it's taking a little bit longer to fund, but we're close. I mean, this week
yeah.
certainly. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Well, and I do. I think you hit the nail, on the head there. There's so much out there. There's so much content to consume. There's so much that we can like, I remember days of COVID when we were locked in our house. We're getting, I was getting those extra checks and I was like, Kickstarter, here we come. Like, and I've
yeah,
had
yeah,
to
yeah.
tone back on
Bigger in,
how much I do that too. So,
yeah,
how do you then as a creator, because this does seem like for independent comics, Kickstarter still is the best option, right? Like compared to where I
yeah,
can go into a store and I can buy, four issues for 24 dollars total or something. Sometimes like that's what I can spend on a Kickstarter campaign. So how do you kind of
yeah.
how do you sell that then to the new? Because like you said, especially when you're doing a new title, because even if it's your
Mhm.
name, it might not still be like, well, do I dip my toe into another book or wait or so how do you
Yeah.
combat that then as a creator?
Yeah, it's tough. Is
Yeah.
the and part of it comes from like the economics of comics are crazy. It is so. I said it's very hard as a creator to make money putting comics in comic shops. Well, it is very hard for a publisher to make money
Yeah.
putting floppies in comic shops for $4. It's just not adding up, which is why you have all these publishers going out of business, and it is a tough go for everyone, and the consumer, again, we are so used to we walk into a comic shop and the floppy's $4 and they bump it up to 5 and we complain but again the economics of all of this
Right.
at the same time that same person is going to complain about a floppy going from $4 to $5, but then they're also going to get on Twitter and complain that, oh well, artists aren't getting paid enough, and so it's really not adding up, which is what
Right.
we're seeing. And so Kickstarter, and crowdfunding in general, direct to consumer it is the market adjustment, right? And it's been really messy and sloppy, and it has been exacerbated by COVID. But it's kind of this is what stuff costs, but this is a boutique product. You're not. This
Right.
is not like walk into Walmart and buy something. This is like go on Etsy and buy an artisan thing, and again, it's not a cheap floppy on tissue paper. It is, you have the books. They're Cadillacs. This is about as nice a glossy a thing as you can get, and then you just try to load it up. I mean, the once we're funded, a single pledge not only gets you the breach, but it gets you 5 of my issue 1s. So you get the Jump #1, Aberrant, Banjax, Peacekeepers, Suicide Jockeys. So that's 6 from me right off the bat. Then we all kind of support each other as creators. So, I'm friends with a lot of great creators, and so they're kicking stuff in too. And so I think right now, one pledge gets you 18 comics. Um, so you start to think about that 18 divided by whatever the $20 you're going to spend. You're getting a pretty good thing. And then, and you get prints and cards and all sorts of stuff. And it's a big comic party.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, you end up getting a lot of value out of it.
Oh, for
But
sure.
but you're right. I mean, the average person goes on and spends $25 on Kickstarter, and it is a premium experience. But we don't pay to go to movies anymore. We'll
No.
talk about that later. Uh, so we got to do something with this entertainment cash,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so put it in the creator's pocket. Yeah.
So, people follow along with my show. They know who you are. We've talked The Jump. We've talked Peacekeepers. We haven't talked The Breach yet though, because this is new. And so like I'm
This is new.
excited
Yeah.
because this is even fresh for me. And of like I remember I got the email like, oh, Rylan has a new Kickstarter. I was like, well, I looked, I was like, what is it? I don't know. Clicked. All right, I'm buying it first. And I'm like, all right, let's look into so
Yeah.
because I was like, I just knew I was gonna
Buy
want
it
to
and then
get
look. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
let's go. So what is
Yeah.
the breach? And because I'm looking at this cover right here
Um,
and it looks stunning, as always.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's good. It is this weird thing because I had the film business is there's no film business right now. We'll talk about the movies I had out this year in a bit. But there's no new business right now. I sold a TV show right before the strike, and we have been kind of waiting for TV to come back ever since, and it is not. So we are all kind of in a holding pattern, which means that I have a little bit of bandwidth or a lot of bandwidth now. And I think the last time we were talking, you sort of alluded to it, where it's like, well, probably the last time we talked, it was like, well, I've done all these Kickstarters. People ask me when the next one is. My secret hope is that I'm too busy with film and TV to do the next one. And that is a little bit hyperbolic,
Yeah.
but Kickstarters they're tough to run and tough to promote and all that stuff. So there is some truth to that. And for I don't know about 2 years, I was kind of too busy to do too much comic stuff. And I am supposed to have two books in comic shops via Dynamite right now. I was kind of the lead writer, one of the lead writers on the whole Immortal Studios imprint at Dynamite, and because of all the craziness that's going on in the entertainment industry, all that stuff is really delayed right now. And so I sort of thought I had comics taken care of for a little while. It's turned out not to be the case. Those books are great though. Fashang Origins. I don't know how, if you back the Kickstarters, you have a copy.
Hmm.
I don't know how you get it otherwise, but man, that was a good book. One of the best books I've done. Check it out if you can find it. Eventually, you'll be able to find it. I hope so, at least. But now I have this bandwidth, and I have had to kind of figure out, well, like what does comics look like to me?
Right.
And comics is I develop IP and I can exploit that IP in film and TV, and so it all kind of feeds the beast. But this Kickstarter is how I've sort of solidified my. I have always had a publishing company, Half Evil Comics, and it has kind of been in the background. It's always been, oh, here's a new book by Rylend Grant, and not what is the half evil slate and what is the half evil philosophy and all that stuff. And I've had to figure that out with this. And so I had a couple of books I could have released, and I was like, well, what is my brand, And the most popular book that we've done is The Jump, and people love The Jump. And every time I put out a different book, people are like, when's the next issue of The Jump coming out? Um, and so yeah, there were it was one of three books probably that I was going to do for this Kickstarter, and The Breach is the most like The Jump, and I don't mean that kind of in a bad like lame way. It's like I think I'm known pretty well even in the film business for doing kind of smart Black Mirror-esque sci-fi thrillers. And I think The Jump really fits into that vein, and The Breach is another one just like that, where it's just smart thinking man's sci-fi and jeans. And so yeah, the idea with the breach is it takes place in the small Alaskan fishing town, and it is kind of a border war story. These smugglers that have operated in Alaska for decades, both Anglo's, white folks, and Native Alaskans. They were always at each other's throats. There was always this competition, them kind of smuggling stuff in from Russia. Well, now these big bad Russians have kind of taken their corner. And so now these people who have hated each other for decades have to come together to unite against these Russians that are trying to take their corner. But at the same time, uh, these portals start popping up in town, breaches, as they're known. And it is a doorway to another time, another place, who knows? It is another border. And something evil's trying to kick its way in. And these smugglers, these hoodlums, end up being kind of the only thing that can stop it. That they're the sort of one thing between us and Armageddon. And so yeah, it is kind of a small town crime story, which I do really well. That's what the
Mhm.
Peacekeepers is.
Yep.
But it is this big sci-fi story, kind of like The Jump. And so I have taken my two brands and kind of married them in a nice way, I think. But yeah,
Which is a
that's the deal.
great, which is a great, if you're just talking about merging two kind of books that in worlds that with Peacekeepers and The Jump really well. And so if you're gonna be coming out, like what's your brand? Well, for half evil, like boom, you're publishing. There you go. Like
Yeah,
this is a great, it's a
yeah.
great four-way into it. So
Yeah. And it is generally my Hollywood brand is, I do crime really well and I do sci-fi really well and I do a lot of other stuff. Haunted Artist. We'll talk about that in a bit. That's something completely different.
yes.
But yeah, that's what I'm best known for in town, and so it makes sense. But it's a really good book, and it was something that just kind of came. Sometimes you have these ideas, sometimes you just start to kind of see it, and it builds in your mind, and then it just comes out. And it wasn't like I didn't plan this for a long time. Some of these books, you're noodling on them for years, and you plan them, and it's like, oh, I got to do this, and how do I market that? This one is just like it just appeared in my head. I
Yeah.
wrote it down, we drew it, and now it's out, and I love it, and I love all the possibility in it, and yeah,
So maybe this is a loaded question, but like let's pause on even like the industry aspect of it from the to start because I know like that probably influences things. But do you, for the most part, do you write like with something like this idea for the breach? You're like, this is an idea that could be a comic or it could be a show, or like do you, like how do you process like an idea of going because you're wearing two hats like, and I know like depends
yeah,
on
yeah,
what's flowing at what time, what business is operating well or not operating well.
yeah.
Does that play, but do you kind of, when you get an idea, do you have to come in your mind of going, this is the comic book, or it could be both, or this is TV?
Yeah.
How do you process that as a creator?
No, it's funny. It's like I think you know me pretty well, and you have hit on the principal question that I wrestle with every day. And I think a lot of us are doing that. And I don't want to go too far back on this, but it was like, so, I mean, I get spit out of AFI, the American Film Institute, where, David Lynch went and Aronofsky and a bunch of filmmakers. And I was a screenwriter. And I went to school at AFI. AFI is the best film school in the world. Like I went to film school with a ton of extremely talented people that are more talented than I am and that work as hard as I do and all that stuff. And then, we had not this not this current or last writer strike, the writer strike before that. Craziness happened, and it became really hard to be a screenwriter. And I watched a lot of people wash out, and most of those people washed out because like they held on to having to be a screenwriter. And at some point, right after the last strike, it wasn't enough to be a screenwriter. You had to become a writer. You had to become a writer of things. And I've talked on the show about how like, well, people wanted IP. And I watched a lot of people they would just write scripts. Scripts weren't selling. And they're like, oh, I guess I can't be a screenwriter. And they went back to Pennsylvania and sold insurance. I'm like, well, if they want IP, let me give them IP. So I started writing short stories. I started writing novels. I started writing comic books. And I would get those published. I would sell those. And then in Hollywood, I'd have a bidding war over them. Right. And so I adapted. A lot of people didn't adapt, and I think the people that stuck around they adapted. I'm a writer, I am a storyteller, not a screenwriter. And sometimes that means I'm a novelist, and sometimes
Mhm.
it means I'm a podcaster, and sometimes it means and it's just go where the stories are, right? And so
Stay out of my podcast lane,
oh,
Ryan.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, yeah, this is a great podcast, but you should listen to the Writer's Block with David
You should.
Aberrant, where
Writer's block is great.
yeah, we talk more process and business and stuff like that. So we're not we're not in competition. I think we are nice side dishes to one another. Um, so yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. And so sometimes somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, we have a spot in this." Here is a we are a publisher of novels, and we would like you to bring us a proposal. And so, I have these worlds that I want to explore, these stories I want to tell them. It's like, well, if I told that as a novel, here's what it would be. Sometimes it's like, well, I need to know what the next comic book is, or whatever. Dynamite says, "Hey, we'd love to do something with you. What do you got?" And I'm like, "Well, here's some ideas." And then if they're like, "We want this one," then it becomes a comic book as opposed to a screenplay. Um, Sometimes a producer calls me and says, "Hey, we're looking for a good heist film. You got any good heist ideas?" And that comes. So there's that. But in terms of me independently workshopping something, I am working currently on a heist thing. And it is, there are heist films everywhere, but they're all the same. And this has a really good, interesting hook, a really good, interesting world that we haven't seen before, and I love it. And so I don't know what it is, and so I have written in screenplay format for, I don't know, 20 years now. And so it is very easy for me to start exploring an idea just in screenplay format. And that I'm exploring the world.
Mhm.
I'm getting scenes down. I'm getting characters talking, all of that stuff. And then if I need to, I can pivot. If it needs to become a novel, then I just have scenes, and it becomes a prose thing, and it needs to fit into the mold of one of those things. But with this heist thing, I'm just banging out screenplay pages, boom, 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 and scenes and a world and people talking and things happening. And I get to about, I don't know, 55, 60 pages, and I have to stop. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, I don't know what this is yet. And right at this point, I pretty much need to figure out what it is before I go any further. And so I had to send these 55 pages to my manager and say, I don't know if this is the first half of a movie, and I just hit the midpoint. I don't know if this is the first episode of like an 8 episode mini series, I don't know if this is the first 3 chapters of a novel. I don't know if this is the first couple issues of a comic book. It's something, but I don't know what it is yet. And so sometimes you're going to look at it and it's just going to be like, well, this is clearly a movie or this is clearly a comic book. Sometimes that'll happen, but it's usually not that cut and dried. A lot of times it's like, well, where's the opportunity? Like right now, there was a while where nothing was selling in Hollywood. Now TV is really not selling in Hollywood. People are like, people don't want TV, don't do TV, which is stupid and nonsensical. However, what is selling a little bit are movies. So my manager was like, yeah, well, there's opportunity in film right now. People want, you were just talking about Rebel Ridge, right?
Yep.
People want the next Rebel Ridge. They want, and so yeah, push it in that direction. There's opportunity there. And so yeah, so a lot of times that's what it is it's like, well, I'm exploring the world. I'm figuring out who the characters are. I'm figuring out what they want and where they're headed, and I'm figuring out some things that are going to end up in their way. And then I have to figure out, well, okay, well, where's the opportunity? And really it's a matter of like, well, I want people to read this stuff. The problem with screenplays and the reason, the reason that I ended up doing comics and short stories is that, well, I wrote so many great screenplays and screenplays that sold, right? Those things bought my house. And But that will never see the light of day. The Hollywood Hills are filled with people that live in like $5 million houses that have sold a dozen screenplays and they don't have their name on anything. And that sucks, right? You've created these worlds, these people, you've told these stories that are wonderful and so wonderful that people are like, let me give you a bag of money to own this thing, and then they never get made for a dozen reasons. And that was pretty hard to handle. And I got tired of stuff dying on hard drives and dying on shelves in Hollywood studios. And so the beauty of a comic book is like, again, like just the idea for the breach popped into my head. I wrote it down. I handed it to an artist. Said artist drew it. Another artist colored it. Another artist lettered it, and now it's on Kickstarter, and you'll have it in your hand in 2 months. And then if it becomes a movie or whatever afterwards, great. Um,
But it still exists.
but I
It
got
exists
tired.
in there.
Yeah, yeah.
People,
It exists in a finished format.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the comic, yeah, and no matter what, the comic is going to be different than the movie, than the TV show, than the whatever, and they're all awesome and equally interesting, but yeah, it's yeah, having it exist, having it live,
Mhm.
having it available, like the idea that my daughter's daughter can get this in 50 years on whatever the equivalent of Amazon is, or I don't know, however we're fucking consuming shit in
Right.
in 50 years. Sorry for my mouth. But yeah, it's like that is important to me. And
Yeah.
so it's like, it's not even like where's the money? You know what I'm saying? When I say where's the opportunity, it's like how how am I going to get this into people's hands and into their heads? And that is like an existential fight.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It is not enough for me to make a paycheck doing this. I feel like I tell pretty good stories and I want people to read them and see them, and they're like little children that, need to be outside playing. So
Which,
that's the fight for me.
yeah, which makes sense. And I mean, there has to be when you put your time and effort and all of this love into something, you you don't. I am not a creator of but I've talked to enough that I feel like you don't necessarily create because oh, you want a paycheck. I mean, that's nice. Don't get me wrong, paycheck's nice. You create because that's what you are.
Yeah.
You have stories you want to tell, and if you're a storyteller, that you want people to hear those stories. Otherwise, you're just talking
Yep.
to yourself. So like I
Yeah.
get the idea of wanting to get stuff out there and be able to like this is something that, I created and it's something that you are passionate about and you want people to be able to see it and go, "Oh," and have those conversations about it.
Yeah, and it's an important process for me. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
writing creative process. It's like I get my demons in a room and I beat the tar out of them. It is my therapy very much, and uh, I when I grew up, things were difficult, and I dealt with that difficulty through art. It was
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily have the greatest role models in my life, but I could go to the television. I could go into the theater, and I saw what a man was supposed to be. I saw how you were supposed to treat people. I saw love. I saw family. I saw all of these things, and it was aspirational.
Yeah.
And I saw that in Die Hard. Even what I'm saying. It's like it's not just it's not these morality plays. Even that it was in everything, like in a really interesting way. And so that's what I am doing. I think me getting my issues in a room and beating the tar out of them, like, well, other people see that. And even when it's, I mean, you look at Aberrant, my first book, and it was my first book, and I'm figuring out how to do this while I'm doing it. But I am, even though it is a big poppy Hollywood action movie, basically, it's actually about something. It is about dealing with loss and grief and PTSD and all of these really heavy things, but all wrapped up in like guys with superpowers beating the tar out of each other. And there is not a San Diego Comic Con that goes by where like a military veteran doesn't go out of his or her way to find me in the crowd of like 200,000 people and pull me aside and be like, "Hey, Aberrant, it meant so much to me. You
Mm.
got us right. I was dealing with this, and I didn't think anybody else was. And then I read this stupid book, and there it is. you
Yeah.
know, I can see you going through it on the page, and it helped me go through it, and it made me not feel alone, and it just meant so much to me. So it's like, and so if Aberrant can do that, imagine what imagine what other things can do. And so
Yeah.
so I am very conscious of that every time I put something out, that it's like this can and should mean something to somebody. Like
Yeah.
they should read this and be better when they leave it, even if it's, and entertaining people is awesome. That's noble and amazing, and we all need that. But also, like, give them some vegetables,
Yeah. Get get
some
that
soul
veg.
vegetables.
Well,
Yeah,
Rylan, we've talked a little bit about some other stuff on the show here. I mean, and one of the things you mentioned is these premium tiers. What was found interesting is um not related to premium tiers, but I'm just saying we sat down, my wife and I, to watch your latest movie that was The Haunted Heart, that you
yeah.
wrote the screenplay for. And about 5 minutes into the movie, my wife looks at me, she goes, how good of friends are you with Ryland? Because next time he shoots a movie at some place like that, we should go. So I'm
Nice.
just saying that could be a
Oh, wow.
premium
Yeah.
tier.
Movie tourism. Yeah. Come visit Ryland on set. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, here's the thing is like, so Haunted Heart is, it takes place on a Greek island, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It was shot in Trikiri, Greece, which is technically a peninsula, but plays really well as an island. And yeah, just beautiful. And that was the yeah, them flying me out to help like prep the movie and everything was yeah, it was kind of one of the highlights of my career. So yeah, that's a really good idea, man.
I'm
You're
just saying,
yeah, make
like,
sure yeah, yeah, make sure she writes some of this stuff down. She's probably got some other great ideas that I'm missing out on. It's really good. But I mean, that is standard. I am going next week to Cynthia Rothrock's premiere here in Hollywood. She did a film called what is the name of the film? It is a martial arts Western mashup called Black Creek. Um, and she crowdfunded the whole thing. She crowdfunded the movie, and then she crowdfunded a graphic novel based on the movie. And I'm gonna have her on my show to talk about it afterwards. But when we met at the Long Beach International Karate Tournament and kind of hit it off, and she invited me to the premiere. But you know, with her with her crowdfunding, I mean that was like come visit the set, and
yeah,
was a was definitely a tier. And she was telling me about how, like, well, there was a we have to draw you into a book. Well, Cynthia had like come be in the movie. And so there were these people who, they backed these tiers, and they got to come, and some of them got to like be in a fight scene. It's like fight Don the Dragon Wilson. That was awesome. But it was like, but she was talking about there is this big blowout fight scene in this bar, and that was where they had most of the people. And so all of the extras in the bar, where you have these, you have Don the Dragon Wilson, like the maybe the best kickboxer ever. You have Cynthia Rothrock. You have, I mean, it was just this laundry list of these amazing martial arts heroes, and they're all fighting in this bar. But everyone in the bar is this super fan, and they're so in awe. And every time a new guy walks in, they're like, "Oh my god!" It's they're trying to hold their shit together. And so that is a th- good ideas, I think.
I'm
So
just
yeah, maybe
saying. So
yeah.
we gotta talk Haunted Heart though, because holy
Yeah.
buckets, just came out on video on demand, as well as in select theaters out there. Tell people about Haunted Heart if they haven't gotten to hear about that yet.
Yeah. So Haunted Heart is a romantic thriller from Academy Award winning director Fernando Trueba. He won the Oscar for foreign language film for Bella Polk a few years back. Just really a master. He directed. It is a very haunting, a very beautiful homage to Hitchcock films and Patricia Highsmith and things like that. A lot of voyeurism and a lot of tension and uh, but then also just kind of this beautiful photo play. It stars Matt Dillon, who everybody knows. The female lead is a woman named Ida Folch, who's a Spanish actress who's very well known in Spain. Should be extremely well known here. She's man, I mean, Matt's great. Matt's always great, but Ida in this movie is just she's just giving you 10 colors in every scene. Um, it is great when it's great when you write, usually you write something. And I dealt with this. I had two movies come out this year. The first one that we don't necessarily need to mention titles or anything. So I'm not trashing people, but it was a good script. It was a very bad film. And so you write a script and you just pray that they capture what you wrote.
Hmm.
Like at a, the minimum is just simply get what we wrote down on the page. And in that first film, and in a lot of films, they didn't get it. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Right.
no, no, you missed this, and then it doesn't add up in the end. This is a movie where, you know, I was not remotely worried about them capturing what was on the page. They got that every time. The beauty of watching it was like what else all of these people brought to
Hmm.
the table, and and particularly with Ida, there's just all of this, I mean, there's great stuff on the page, but then she brings so much more to it. So much, internal, strife and wonder and stuff like that. It just really amazing to watch her, and you kind of fall in love with her doing it. But yeah, it is a love story first. It's kind of the first half of the movie is a love story, and then the second is, turns into this kind of thriller. She falls in love with this handsome man on a Greek island, and he seems to be wonderful and great, but maybe he's got something in his past, and then that thing in the past ends up being pretty ugly. And Yeah, and then it kind of turns into a bit of a horror show. But Yeah, but and it is there's not a lot of art in the movie theaters and on the video on demand. There's a lot of entertainment. But this is very much a piece of art in the best way. But I also think it's entertaining,
Yeah.
and I do think it's like this beautiful love story, and yeah, just a lot of really great artists kind of throwing 100 miles an hour in this thing, and I think you're gonna like it. And if you were a fan of the Sundance movement, this is a callback. This is a movie that you would have seen at a great festival, 10 years ago. Not a lot of room for that stuff right now, unfortunately. But I yearn for it.
Hmm.
And here it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I remember like getting to sit down and watch it. Well, I don't say I remember. I mean, it happened like 2 days ago when we were recording this, so I have a pretty good memory. So, but I was like, I remember when I first saw that movie.
Back in my day. That's good.
But like what I remember is watching it going through. I'm like, okay, I'm like, I see where this is going. Like a cool story, but like it is it is an art. Like and you the like to see it right there. It almost is like the best way I can describe it for most of my listeners who are comic book readers is like you've got like so many page splash pages, in this movie that are being shown of just
Mm.
like this picturesque uh world, but it's which makes it feel big, but it also is such a small world. And to see the beauty of like what you have like in an art house film style like that, that then that first half makes the second half so much better because we spent time dealing with these characters and investing in this build into then what like you said gets into the thriller ass, and that reminds me very much of like a Hitchcock film or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
that's what we were aiming at. And yeah, there's so much out there now where people are just kind of pointing the camera at stuff and just
mm,
recording it, and there's not any art, and there's just so much to this, visual thematics that gets set up and paid off over time. And there's this seasonal structure where the drama is kind of changing like the seasons change. And he's doing so much again. I mean, Hitchcock, Hitchcock, he he put the camera everywhere deliberately.
mhm.
There is not a thing that is an accident in a Hitchcock film. The camera is in a place to tell you a specific thing and to make you feel a certain way. And we don't have that anymore. Again, it's like, oh, they're talking over there, point the camera at it. That's what we get. You watch Rebel Ridge, and Rebel Ridge is great and awesome, and again, entertain the hell out of me. but
Mhm.
Rebel Ridge is like, there's Don Johnson. We're going to point the camera at him and
Right.
record Don Johnson being awesome. I love Don Johnson. I love seeing Don Johnson be awesome. But
Yes.
this this is a different level. This is a different level. Fernando is again, he is a master with the camera, and has been for forever. You know, and Fernando is a guy who, again, he's got his Oscar, but he's I think he's won like 12 Goyas, which are the Spanish Oscars. He's won like 13 European Film Awards, which are the European Oscars. You know, he's won you know, the Berlin Festival and awards at Cannes, and you know, he's about as decorated as can be. But yeah, it's you know, every shot is telling you something, and
Right.
every shot is making you feel a certain way. And you know, the music is you know, the music is firing on all cylinders. They have this brilliant composer, who he's a Polish composer who is best known. He did the Three Colors trilogy, did the Decalogue. You know, a lot of people, a lot of art house lovers will know those films,
Yeah.
and so yeah, the music is telling us a bunch of stuff. So it's weird. It's interesting, even though I mean, it is the film business you're like, it's in select theaters. That's because there's
Right.
no there's no there's no theater business anymore. Brad Pitt and George Clooney just had a film that they thought was going to go into theaters, and surprise, it didn't. And they're like, "What? What do you mean? Like, we're the two biggest stars in the world. What do you mean? Like,
Right.
this is not going to be in a theater?" They did the Roadhouse
With Jake,
remake
yeah, with Jake Gyllenhaal.
with Jake Gyllenhaal. You know, again, one of the probably five biggest male stars in the world, and Doug Liman, who has made, you know, a dozen amazing films. And that was set to be in a theater, and at the last minute, Amazon's like, "Nah, we're just going to throw it on Amazon." And Doug Liman was so livid that they were having this big premiere at South by Southwest. He wouldn't show up to the premiere. He was so livid. There was not a theater business. So what I will say is that this, even though it's not in a ton of theaters now, it is in more theaters than was the most recent Brad Pitt George Clooney movie, and certainly in more theaters than was you know, Roadhouse, which is insane to me because God, if there was a movie that was made for a theater right now, it was that Roadhouse movie. Tons of fun. But yeah, so there's that. But then also it's man, you know, I'm just watching it, and this had a huge release in Spain.
Mhm.
It had a huge release in one of the stars is Juan Pablo Orrego, who is a huge star in Colombia, and so big release in you know, in Colombia and South America in general. He is kind of this heartthrob down there. And but yeah, in America, man, things are so crazy. And you know, it used to be that, well, you know, every week it's like, well, here are these 6 to 8 films coming out this week, and let's all sit around and talk about them, and let's review them all. Nobody's reviewing this, and you know, it used to be you would get reviews from like the top 20 papers, and they're legit reviewers who have, you know, film theory backgrounds, and they're reading everything, and that's not the case anymore. And so you look at the state of reviews now, and you know, the reviews I'm seeing, it's like, you know, it's like the concerned housewife blog or whatever, and you know, somebody who you know, who has no idea who Alfred Hitchcock is, and it's just like, you know, I don't know, I was, you know, I didn't like that. I didn't like that. It made me feel uncomfortable. You know, so that is the state of criticism, and the state of it's weird because I came up in the Sundance movement. You know, I mean, I saw Pulp Fiction. I said I want to do that. This is me getting to do that finally after 15 plus years of doing this, and yeah, the world's not set up for it anymore. So it is tough. Even like audience reviews, it was like there was a, if you look, you know, it is the deceptive thing, and I hope it doesn't keep people from seeing it, because this is a legitimately good
Mhm.
movie. I love it. But you know, when you bring it up on Amazon VOD, like the IMDb rating is there, and it's not great right now. And it is not great because almost all of the reviews on that IMDb rating came from a single screening in Mallorca, that like a couple of hundred people were there, and they dubbed the film into Spanish. and they did it quickly and haphazardly because the screening was kind of a surprise. And so the dubbing was terrible, and
Yeah.
everybody hated the dubbing, and people couldn't watch the movie because the dubbing was terrible. And so you go and you read the reviews, and it's all, man, the dubbing was terrible. I had to leave because the dubbing was so horrific. Uh, when you watch it at home, it's not going to be dubbed; it's in English.
Nope.
And
There's no sub. Well, there was a couple of subtitles where they're like explaining when they're speaking in a different language, but
well, yeah. It is about a multicultural
yeah.
thing. There's these people from everywhere that come to this Greek island, and because of that, you do have some people who are not uh, English is not their first language, and so if there was a hiccup or two in the film, it's because somebody doesn't English is again not their first language, but that's how it would be on an island where it's like you got people from a dozen different places, and how do they communicate, right? Um, but it is weird. It is like I just I sort of said this on my social media. I think you probably read the thing, but it's like this is a really good film, and they
Mhm.
don't make films like this anymore. And the world needs this film, and it needs art in general. And people just I don't know, they don't care, and it's because they're not set up to care right now, and they don't have the people anymore, the good critics and the people in good situations to tell them to care.
Mhm.
And it's not in a movie. Again, something goes into a movie theater and has a big release, and people are like, "Oh, I should care about that because this is the stuff you care about." And I don't know. I feel like this movie is being dumped into a crack between two eras.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of sucks. And it's so this movie, I wrote this movie like 16 years ago. This was the first movie I ever got paid to write in Hollywood. And back then, it came really close. We were on the 2 yard line with it. It was going to come out with Penelope Cruz and Billy Bob Thornton, and those Ida Fulch, Matt Dillon roles, and it was going to be, with those stars back then, it was going to be probably a 20 or $30 million movie. It was going to get a huge release. I was going to go to the premiere at the ArcLight, and there were going to be DVDs and everything that happened back then. It would have been a much bigger film. It would have been better for my career back then. And it didn't happen because of the last strike. We can go into the 100 reasons why it didn't happen, but it didn't
Right.
happen. Uh, the script is so good, it kept sticking around, and eventually it got made. What I will say is that this movie is smaller, but this movie is so much better than the movie would have been back then, even though it would have been a bigger film and it would have been more highly regarded and it would have been reviewed and all of that stuff. We are not set up right now to have this film, but this film is so much better, and artistically it has so much more soul, has so much more heart. We wouldn't have had Ida, and I mean I love Penelope, she's amazing, but man, does Ida throw 120 miles an hour in this movie. Um, and so it's kind of bittersweet, where it's like I feel like this is the movie that I deserved, but in a way it's not the movie that I deserved, or the movie the world
Right.
deserved. It's not, the world is not set up to accept it. We made this great piece of art, and the world doesn't care about art right now. There's nobody to tell them to. So it's a little sad. It's a tragedy, but it is a good movie. And if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, and you and your wife are at home on a Friday night, put Haunted Heart on. Just pop on Amazon, and you can watch it on Google Play. You can watch it on Apple TV,
Apple
anywhere you get your
TV.
VOD.
Yep.
Yeah, and it'll be on Netflix in a little bit, that sort of thing. And but yeah, it's a good movie, and it is a piece of art, and the world needs art right now. You need art in your life,
Yes.
whether you know it or not. Watch it and be nourished.
Yes. Feed your soul.
Uh, yeah, yeah, and here's the thing: is like I don't turn into script that I don't think is good. So the script is good, but you've heard me talk about the other movie. I had to promote the other movie because it was the number two movie on Peacock for a month, and so you kind of have to be like, hey, I did this thing that is popular for whatever reason, but it was a bad movie, and you commented on the post. You're like, hey, oh wow, I can't wait, I'm gonna go watch it. and you immediately get a message from me, don't go watch it. It is a bad movie. It is a, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, so again, like I don't turn to the script that I don't think is good, but that
Right.
doesn't, there are a million things that can go wrong after that. And even though Emile Hirsch gave a great performance in that movie, and there are good things about it, it is a really bad movie. It is a bad movie. Really bad is maybe enough, but and here's the thing: is like if it was supposed to be a bad movie, I don't care. It was like okay, it was supposed to be a bad movie. It's a bad
Right.
movie. Cool. What bothers me is when it should have been, when it could have been a good movie,
Right.
should have been a great movie. Um, that's when I get angry, and so that movie makes me angry because I feel like with what Emile brought to it, with what the
Mhm.
script was doing, and for a million reasons, ended up not being a good movie. This movie, I feel like the film Fernando made was so much better than the script, even. And that's what you hope for, and that's what you pray for. He made me look like a genius. The performance Ida gave was so much better than the character that I wrote for her. And when you write a character, that's what you pray for. And so this film is like prayers answered in 100 different ways, and people should be doing backflips over it. And I don't say that easily because again, do not go see the film before that because it's terrible and I hate it. This
Right.
film is awesome. Go
Yeah.
see this film and go celebrate and go tweet about how great Ida is and go tweet about what a genius Fernando is. And if you have, if you have some bandwidth left, then tell me I did a good job too. But
That's
but
right.
but it's not needed.
That's right. I tell Ryland
Yeah,
enough. You guys don't have to worry. No, I'm just
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
gang, go check out Haunted Heart. Again, it's everywhere you can get videos on demand. I will say though this, check your local listings. If you have one of those theaters that do show art house like and you can see it in the like that, I'm like, man, I wish this I could be sitting and seeing that on the big screen. Do it, go check it
Yeah.
out. And gang, go click the link to the in the description here for the Kickstarter, The Breach. It's live right now as this video is dropping and airing. Um, so much comics and Hollywood talk. Ryland, I hesitate to ask, is there anything we haven't gotten to touch on though yet before I officially let you go?
Yeah, yeah. You and I both have to go grab kids. But no, I mean that's the deal. As I said, the 100 Hearts in theaters. You just covered that. The Breach is on Kickstarter. It's a great book, Black Mirror-esque sci-fi. Go dig that. And look for more from Half Evil Comics in the near future because we are coming full force. There will be a new issue of The Jump. That is the next Kickstarter. Um, uh, if I can get it in before the end of the year, I will. I don't know if I can. It might be early next year. But it is, I toyed with the idea of calling it, do I call it the Jump issue 4 or do I call it the Jump election special?
Ooh,
And it deals with, well, what do politics look like and what would an election look like if, there were people who were operating on the astral plane and could see everything, know everything, go. What is it? Go anywhere, see everything, know anything.
yeah,
That mantra from issue 3. And so yeah, it's really interesting, and so we don't take a side. In fact, it kind of deals with how we're fighting a losing battle by taking sides the way we do, and that the truth is always going to be in an area of gray, and until we can kind of like meet in the middle on some things, we're kind of screwed. uh but in the end, we're probably all screwed because we won't. um, but it deals with that, I think, in a really cool way, and have some fun. I think take shots at everybody. And the problem with that is that people only see the shots that you take at their guy or their gal. But we're equal opportunity shot
it's
takers.
been
So
across the board.
we're
Everyone gets it.
we're,
So yeah,
we're gonna stir some stuff up with it. But hopefully people like it. It's a great issue. The people who have read it say it's the best issue. So look for that. Yeah.
looking forward. Well, Rylan, where can people follow along with you? So when you do release, comics and talk about movies and stuff, where's the best place for them to stay up to date with what you're working on?
Yeah, I am at Rylend Grant on all forms of social media. That is RYLENDGRANT. I have to spell it because it's not a real name. My parents just kind of drunkenly arranged letters and saddled me with it, and so now I have to spell it for everybody. But yeah, the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, I guess Blue Sky and Threads now also. So
Everywhere.
yeah, get all your Ryland Grant news.
And gang, if you like, we mentioned it briefly, but if you do like, what I do with bringing on comic creators, Ryland has a great podcast with David Avalone called The Writer's Block, where they go into deeper dives with creators, and I highly recommend getting that wherever you get your podcasts as well. So,
Yeah, and that's creative process and business
yes.
of film and comics and stuff like that. So creators talking shop, and you're a fly on the wall. So yeah, come see it. We actually had a really good discussion this week about IP issues. Yeah, that was cool. So if you're interested in that, the legalities of all of it, yeah, come check it out.
So, well, gang, with that being said, go check out everything. Check out Haunted Heart on video on demand. Support the breach on Kickstarter. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.